Thanks for joining us today. Today we're going to be looking at some work that's been done as a true partnership between the Microsoft, Derbyshire Police and the PDS in terms of what we've been doing towards national policing around football. And it's called the football use case, and we're going to go into that a little bit today. Let's get into today's subject and what we're going to be talking about. And first of all, I'm going to come over to Richard Atherton, who's part of our team. Now, we've got two Richards on the call today, so I'm going to have to be quite formal, which isn't the normal style. But Richard, first of all, could you explain what we've been doing and what the app aims to achieve?
Thanks, Dave. Well, fundamentally, it's all about using these really fabulous tools that are provided by Microsoft 365, really to enable really good, high quality, better data for commanders and staff on the ground, not just at match day, but also in the planning prior to match day. I think the beauty of this solution is it's leveraging that always current data technology, and the latest source of the truth comes into play. I had a conversation with a commander just the other day. They received an email about a change to staffing list, significant change to staffing list on the Friday night before a match day. She wasn't able to pick it up until actually match day itself, and the staff weren't in the right place at the right times. That wouldn't have happened with this solution, I'm certain of it. And so using that sort of current live data, it gives commanders better, makes them decision making that much better, more efficient, and ultimately leads to safer public events for our communities.
So how did you go about creating this app, and how does the partnership come together?
So that's the word partnership. Myself and Rich Burton, who you'll hear from in a short while, came up with the idea about 14 months ago. We locked ourselves away in a basement. We've got quite a lot of experience between us in terms of working football matches. We're both ex-police officers, and we had some really good ideas about how to implement it. So we had a bit of an outline design, and then we brought in the National Football Policing Unit as well, and worked closely with Chad from that unit, all with an eye for the new LUDA system that's coming in the new season, and really about capturing that high quality data. And then we needed a partner to work within Force, and that's where Derbyshire came into the mix. So it's been a real partnership approach to try and forge what I think is a really effective solution.
Thanks, Richard. Now, I'll ask you a little bit later on how people access the app, but I think we really need to get into actually seeing this. So we've got Gavin Atkins from Derbyshire on the line who'll come on in a couple of minutes. But first of all, Richard Burton, see how it's going to get complicated, is going to take us through what's been going on from the Microsoft point of view. So, Rich, over to you.
Yeah, thanks ever so much, David, and thanks everyone for joining us today. And just as Rich was saying earlier on, this has been such a great opportunity for us to work alongside with PDS and Derbyshire Police, just showing how we can really make a difference working together going forward, and having the opportunity to make such an impact in the football user case. It has been just amazing opportunity, really. So I really wanted just to showcase a couple of these slides today, and I think, as we'll allude to later on the workshop, we can go into the actual more of a live demonstration. But fundamentally, when we're looking at the user case, it is purely down to that data quality, easy access to the data, the single version of the truth, all those types of things that are really important with that. And this is all contained within Microsoft Teams. So bringing together our usual sort of suspects that we can add into Teams, such as Microsoft Lists, Power Automate, Power Apps, really brings that whole solution together. And the first aspect of this is, how do we go about planning a football match? And as you can imagine, the amount of different games that we've got, each individual games needs its own attention. So what we've gone to is, rather than having that historical sort of S-Drive folder, multiple different versions of the truth and different versions of document everywhere, is to bring that into one central location. So through that planning stage, what you can see here is almost like a Kanban board, where we can actually start moving each one of these particular tiles, which represents a football match, and contained in that we'll have things such as the op order, the staffing matrix, where everybody can access that. We can also manage the access as well. So rather than inviting people in to see every single match in there and all the different intel related to that, we can start being really more specific around actually you only need to see that particular match and that need to know basis from there. In addition to that, we've got the audit process through the version history of it, so absolute key when it comes to managing police data, and that ability as well to say, for instance, if you've got a game like the Mansfield Town and you're going to be the goal commander on that, you can set up alerts, so whenever that's modified, updated, that commander will get an appropriate alert from there. So taking that to the next step from that, we really wanted to be able to create two teams. So we've got one team which is dedicated to the operational planning stage, which will be for your dedicated football officers, which will be pretty much a lockdown team area where that planning can take place. And then there'll be another open team, which is for the rest of the organisation who's involved in the actual policing of that. And within that operational planning phase of it, you know, we've got this ability now where we can showcase how Microsoft Teams can enable that cross collaboration piece with external partners, whether that's the football club, whether that's other police forces across the country. And you know, it's a three stage approach to that. First stage is that ability where you can actually have emails sent directly into a particular channel. Some people might not be aware of that, but again, that reduces the amount of sort of mailboxes that we need to have around, and we can actually have that information coming directly into that. The second stage is around that guest access, which is, you know, those discussions that you guys have had on webinars before, which has been fantastic, and then also Teams Connect. So we're building the sort of foundations to introduce guest access and Teams Connect going forward. So when we're preparing for a match day, and as we sort of alluded to earlier on, is that we've got this Microsoft list, which is sort of transformed into almost like a planner board, if you like. And by having the operational order, the staffing matrix in there, we wanted to showcase how Power Automate can really start helping officers and staff through the utilization of creating automatic sort of workflows from there. So rather than the dedicated football and officer having to send out that document to multiple different people as an attachment on an email, and therefore you lose that version control. Again, what we've been able to do with this particular sort of user case is when an item is dragged into the match day bucket, which you can see indicated on this particular PowerPoint here, that will automatically create a channel for that particular footballing event. So in this case, it will be the Stevenage versus Salford City, and that will have its own dedicated channel so that the officers and staff that are policing that will have an area where they can collaborate just for that. In addition to that, it will automatically populate that channel with the operational order, and then we can do other bespoke messages. Could be a policy message that maybe wants to be communicated by the force, or it could be something like the weather report, for example. In addition to that, the sort of the makeup of the operational team will have a commander hub, and that will be a privatized channel. And within that privatized channel again is an area where your gold commander, your attack ads, your bronze commander can all collaborate on those sort of policy decisions from there as well. And that will be populated automatically with the staffing matrix. So again, as Rich alluded to earlier on around that, you know, I didn't understand what staffing I had at that time because I'd missed the email or what have you. This will hopefully negate those issues going forward. So as we're coming on to the actual match day policing team, what we have got is, just as we spoke about, is that commanders hub. So that is a central area for our commanders, those decision makers on that footballing game, so they can have that area to collaborate. And again, they can receive emails directly into that channel as well. But in addition to that, what we wanted to showcase is, as we completely recognize the digital transformation that we are seeing people taking, moving away from paper books to OneNotes and things like that, we really wanted to add that extra layer of protection. And that was around the area of decision logs. So as we know with OneNote, great opportunity for us to utilize it, but as easy it is to make an entry in a dynamic operational setting, it's as easy as it is to delete that as well. So the idea was, can we create a decision log whereby the commander or the TACADs can create those bespoke decisions, and actually it creates a real auditable process from there, which is locked down, which is then open to scrutiny should a serious case review ever be required going forward from that. And that's exactly what we've delivered here. Again, is the utilization through simple things like a Microsoft form, which you can easily adapt to govern to what is suitable for your particular force, but also once you've completed that entry on that particular Microsoft form, it will populate on a Microsoft list. And you can see in the slideshow right here is that, again, that will sort of dictate in chronological order what decisions have been made, what the rationale was, what that sort of thematic area was around, and who made that decision and what time and date that particular decision was made again. So again, really sort of giving our commanders a real sort of leg up there in terms of helping them protect them when it comes to that decision making. So one of the great things that we really particularly like, and this is, you know, a lot down to Chris Wilson's work around this, was there was actual key information that we were seeing when we first got presented with a blank sort of template of an operational order of it was repeatable information. And we was actually thinking, well, rather than trying to sort of move people away from wanting to print operational orders off and have them in the back pocket, and again, operational security, can we actually transfer some of that data actually onto an app that was easily contained within that sort of football environment? And what you can see here is, again, something that we delivered to Derbyshire for their use is an app that is available on mobile devices, and it really runs through a couple of key areas really. One is spotter information or key persons of interest, and within that you can have people who are on your banning orders, or as that dynamic information intelligence is coming through, we can actually update those areas so that we're giving our officers and staff that information they need. In addition to that, when we were talking around about what information do they need to know to do their job, things like ground plans, what are the major incident plans should a critical incident be created? Then in addition to that, let's provide our officers with that GESIP sort of information, decision making, and if we've got dispersal orders in place, then we can all have that, and that'll be easily accessible. As we then come on to the way in which we can do briefings, you know, we and particularly during my time when I was back in Derbyshire, was that ability to hear that some of our officers are having to come on duty an extra 2 hours earlier and having to travel, just come to a centralized location to hear standard briefing. You know, what are the different options that we can do that? But in addition to that, how can we make it a much more inclusive environment so that we cater for everybody's needs, so they can interpret that information properly? And that is through the use of video recordings, through utilization of Microsoft Stream. Again, easily uploadable. We've got our captions on there so people can take the time, understand what's being asked for them, but also at the same time, it's protecting everybody in that environment to say, that was the direction that I get from a commander point of view, but also, well, that's the information that I received from my commander as well. So it protects everybody. In addition to that, we can have things like half-time briefings as well. So, you know, that dynamic way of being able to do that. And then the final aspect of it was that ability for our dedicated football officers to sort of say, how do we get that reporting back to the national centre? So again, we've put reporting incident matrix in there. So again, we can have that reporting and those alerts sent right back to our DFOs. So again, how do we bring all that together and providing real awareness for our officers? So again, as I mentioned earlier, on this open team, once our DFOs have transferred that item into a match day policing, it creates that bespoke channel for that particular day. And this is where really the app does come in, because if we open it up here and we've got this real rogue fella here, Rich Burton, who's expected to attend without a ticket, it's been no to inside, pitch invasions and other key matches. We can actually then say, if we see Rich Burton at a train station in company with other people, but we can't get to him, how can we communicate that without overloading the airways radio and those types of things? And we can indicate that through pressing the spotted button. We can click on the spotted button. That will give us an option to provide an update. And in turn, once we've done that, that will automatically create an officer bulletin in that channel. And as you can see there, that's how it's sort of transferred over there, that Burton's been seen with 2 unknown males at train station drinking alcohol, for officers to be aware. That in turn not only makes everybody else aware, but it provides great evidence for our DFOs, for evidence for future banning orders and that type of information from there. So as we've gone through the whole of this, and apologies, I'm really whipping through this today, and I think it's the real reason why we'd like to encourage you to come to the workshop that we've got coming up, is the final aspect of it is how can we really help our DFOs with that post-match reporting? Well, through the app, making sure that that's available to everyone to be able to submit if there's been pyrotechnics used, pitch invasions, those type of things. That will automatically send an alert to our DFOs. In addition to that, that will then provide a template for our DFOs to complete based upon that information, and then in turn provide us with a match summary with all the items that we need to do to submit back to the National Centre from there. And then taking that a next step further, we can then start visualizing that data, because that data is automatically now contained upon Microsoft SharePoint lists, and through that we've got that integration into Power BI as well. So through that aspect of it, it really does provide us with, whilst we can get that information through the National Centre, there may be times out of hours where we really want to tap into that from there. So just open that back over to yourself, David, and Chris, for anything else.
Thanks, Richard. And Chris is already answering questions in the post, so please keep your questions coming in. But before we go into a few more questions and a little bit more about how you can access this, I think it's really important we actually talk to somebody who's actually used it in the wild of Derbyshire. So Gavin, over to you. Could you explain what your role is and where you've used the app?
Hello, yes. So I'm a project manager in the Business Change and Innovation team at Derbyshire Constabulary, and having worked on the NEP previously, the rollout locally, I'm now managing Programme Evolve, which is aimed at getting the biggest return on investment possible from our investment in 365. And the football use case solution features one of our use cases. So the Evolve team, working closely with the DFOs, Microsoft and PDS, were able to pilot the football use case in a Derby friendly against Leicester City in July early this year.
So can you tell us who was using the actual app and what the sort of things they were using it for?
Yeah, so the overall solution, I suppose, from the admin and planning element of it, that's used by the DFOs. And I think that was a real driving force behind getting this use case started. The DFOs wanted to work better utilising the 365 technology that's been delivered, and in fairness, they've really taken to it and are getting the reward from centralising all of the planning work, utilising Teams and the SharePoint list that Rich has ran through. So from our point of view, that's been adopted as a standard process already now. So that's a real success story with the DFOs. The Match Day Commander Hub, again, which was discussed. I was fortunate enough to work alongside the Silver Commander and the Tactical Advisor on the day of the pilot. So it's for those roles, and both those roles are required to record decisions, notes, advice. So the introduction of the solution moves away from paper-based or siloed logs being kept, and in actual fact it moves towards that digital, secure and centrally managed solution. And then the Match Day app itself, so that was made available to those allocated officers on the ground working on the match day for the pilot event, so the likes of the spotters. Again, this was about moving away from print arts and multiple emails, that type of approach, to actually having that single location with one version of the truth available to all those officers. And we wanted to give the officers everything real time, just at their fingertips.
So I'm going to go to, obviously, technology is always challenging to bring in. Were there some challenges that you experienced on the day? And perhaps you'll need Richard Athen to help with explain what they were doing about them. But what were sort of the issues that you did experience?
Yeah, well, I mean, obviously we had a lot of positive feedback on the app itself. However, we found that there were some connectivity issues that impacted our ability to really put the app through its paces on the day, and that's due to mobile saturation in and around the football stadium. There's a lot of people there, so the app availability was patchy at best, I'd say. So we couldn't give it the testing that we'd hoped for. But we'll, however, as you mentioned, we're looking at options around mitigating that, or potentially adapting things so that we can make the most of the app. So we've had some discussions with Derby County, some internal discussions, and obviously from a PDS perspective, there's also some options to explore there. So yeah, it's still a work in progress on that front. But Richard A, should I say?
Yes, Gav, again, from a PBS perspective, we're certainly working with our suppliers, partners, to see if there are some easy solutions that we can offer around that. So again, we'd love to work with a force if they deploy this solution, or Derbyshire, around some commercial offerings around that sort of high saturation data point around a stadium. So it's work in progress, that, Dave.
And that's what we're going to cover in the workshop when we have that. But it's certainly added overall benefit. But obviously, there's challenges that we all experience around a large crowd at a large venue. But the technology itself was working good. Information security is always an important consideration now. What Richard Byrne explained, is this is already using all the technology we've already got. But Richard Athen, it is getting confusing. We'll have to change your names next time. What sort of assurance can you give to forces who might want to start using this sort of technology, not just for football, but for other events?
Yeah, sure, David. The solution is built, as I say, entirely within the Microsoft 365 stack. That is obviously aligned to the national blueprint, and it's in your forces assured tenancy. So data always stays in your environment, and that means it's always up to date and it's always easily accessible. So that's some reassurance I can provide. When we start to talk about guest access and federation, there are some challenges there, and it is a hot topic, of course, but this allows partners to collaborate on your data. But it's very much a part of future adaptation for this solution, because I think we can go much further. There are forces out there that have cracked the nuts in terms of guest access. We'd like more.
Yeah, absolutely. And you were lucky enough to go to St George's Park the other week to actually explain this to more football liaison officers and the National Football League. What was the sort of outcome of that?
Absolutely, hugely positive. A number of forces came up to me after the presentation, just sort of wanting the solution yesterday. Certainly from Chief Constable Mark Roberts, who's the MPCC lead for football policing, was very supportive, and will be making a short address ahead of the workshop on the 18th. And I think what forces really loved was it's free and available on the solution catalogue very soon, so you don't have to pay for it.
And that's a perfect segue to change the script and go to where people will be able to get it from. We've popped a link into the chat where people have registered, but if you headed over to the PDS website where all our solutions are available, the website itself is we've put a public version of all the apps and solutions available on the solutions page. If you scroll down there, you'll see a football policing one. At the moment, it's a register your interest as it at the moment. To get through to the other solutions, you do have to be part of policing. If you clicked the button, you would go through to the solutions catalogue and be able to access them. If you don't get presented with the solution that you're looking for, you'll be asked to come back here and click on the form, and then you can be granted access to the solutions catalogue itself to be able to get into it. So this is really important. We're just going through final testing at the moment before we make the solution available, and then we'll put that online available, and it does come with all the documentation for local adapting, but the workshop will go into more detail on that when we get to it. So I can see a few questions that have been coming in there. So I think the first question was about data retention and how long does it retain the data. Chris, could you give a little bit of overview about how the data retention works?
Yeah, absolutely. So I tried to answer Mark's question. So I think it would also depend on whether we mean audit logs or whether we mean retention of SharePoint list items, because they are two different things. If we're talking about the SharePoint list items themselves, they would be in line with your force's retention policy. So if you have a retention policy in the force which says keep everything forever, not necessarily recommended, by the way, but then those list items will be kept forever, as you know, whether anybody tries to delete them or not. They will go into a hidden area and still be recoverable.
That's really helpful. The question about the data access, we've mentioned that, and we are going into more and more options around that. And of course, there's a lot of the match day prep happens away from the ground as well, so there is that option to allow that to happen. So Richard, what's the next steps for this as we move forward, and then we'll get towards the end?
Yeah, I think probably the most important thing is registering your interest for the solution, register interest for the workshop. Now, the key date for me is the 18th of October. Really, please keep that clear if you can. 2 p.m. in the afternoon, we've got a workshop running. We will be running it for 90 minutes, and it's a really good opportunity to really explore the solution. There'll be a live demo from Rich and Chris on the day itself, but also we'll have opportunities for question and answer, lots and lots of time to do that. There'll be an input from Mr. Roberts ahead of that session, and also we'll have a chance to speak with the NFPU representatives, and Derbyshire DFOs and Ops Inspector will be on that call along with Gavin to really answer those questions that you no doubt will have. So please put that in your diaries and come along. It'll give you lots of opportunity to really experience the solution in its entirety.
Thanks, Richard. And you can see on screen there some of the other events we've got going on at the moment. It would be remiss of me not to remind you about a huge event that we've been planning for a little while now, and it's our Power Platform event with Microsoft and GMP taking place at Greater Manchester Police on the 20th of October. That's a full day's event. Now, it's not open to everybody. We've had to limit the numbers, and what we wanted to do was make sure we got good representation from every force in terms of senior leaders, tech experts, and some technical users, some people who use the technology from the different areas of policing. With the first big deadline is coming up this week, so we need the nominations if you haven't already done that. If you are interested, you can of course contact us. We are having a wait list, as you can imagine, to get people along to that. So if you do need to get in touch, contact us, and we're more than happy to extend invitations once we've got clear exactly the numbers that are coming. So I'd like to thank our huge talented audience today. So Gavin from Derbyshire for bringing us in, obviously the two Richards, Richard Atherton from the PDS, Rich Burton of course from Microsoft, and Chris Wilson, who does all the work in the background with us to answer all the questions. So thanks very much for joining us. I hope you can join us for our next webinar in a couple of weeks time next week, when we're going to be doing more and more of this. All the events are on our website, so please do hit the event, see what's coming up, and make sure you are subscribing to all the latest updates from PDS. Thanks a lot.